You are about to listen to a Jason Burgos exclusive interview. How are you feeling about camp? How's that going?
It's been really good so far, man. I've been super blessed. Just had a really solid training camp up to this point, and got to work with all my guys. So I'm stoked.
I saw the pictures you working with Khabib. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I've been working on and off with Khabib for past couple years now, really, and we've just been lucky. We've been lucky that our fights have been lining up close to similar times. Him fighting a weekend after me, it's just perfect. So not only do I get the Khabib effect, I get all of his, all the people that he brings along with him. So it's been just even the cherry on the top as far as training partners go over at AKA.
Now, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, but I figured I'd get out the way now since we're talking about it. Are you full time at AKA, or are you still, splitting time with where you were before and AKA?
Yeah. So more or less, I'm full time, but I do split. I'm not just like only AKA in terms of my origins. I come from Raul Castillo. That's really my original roots, and that's my jiu-jitsu instructor out in Half Moon Bay. So I'm still always with Raul, but I'm only training with Raul, like just me and him one-on-one, like once a week at this point during training camps, because it's so intensive with all the sparring and stuff like that at AKA, And really, that's where all the drilling partners are. That's where all the training partners are. I'm also getting 1 day a week over at CSA with a bunch of those Muay Thai guys out there, Gaston Bolanos and company. And so, like, the combination of all these things have been great. I go to Josh Thomson's gym on actually tonight, Tuesday nights. So I'm kind of a little bit all over the place. But in terms of like my major hard sparring, it's primarily AKA.
All right, so I have more questions that's coming to mind from that, but I'll get back to that first. The first thing I wanted to actually just tell me about your path to MMA. I mean, what made you want to become a fighter?
Well, to be honest, it's like I kind of always explain it as it was something really organic for me. It was kind of like one thing led into the other, led into the other, led into the other. It was like I didn't necessarily see the UFC back in the day and be like, that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was because it was so kind of rough around the edges back then. Or, I was a little softer in general back then. I'm not exactly sure what the reasonings were.
Mm-hmm.
It was more just that I loved wrestling, I loved competing against people. I loved figuring out how to beat stronger people, because I was always the run. I was always a run coming up. Even into my early 20s, I was a skinny kid,
Mm-hmm.
So it was like the wrestling led me into jiu-jitsu, the jiu-jitsu led me into striking, and then it was like, all right, that's what we're doing. We're putting this all together. And then I, had my first couple amateur matches, and I was like, whoa, this is sick. I get to literally use anything I want. So it's kind of like the freedom to be creative, at the same time, like doing some damage and doing cool things that kind of was my, appeal to MMA.
You mentioned wrestling. Did you wrestle in high school and college? You have like a background in that?
No college, just high school. I started when I was like a youngster, like 5th grade. I started wrestling. My dad was a wrestler, so I was always like aspiring to be like him. And my senior season, after I finished my senior season, I was all gung-ho, I was going to move out. I didn't get any full rides, but I got, drafted by a couple of like the local colleges and stuff like that. I was either going to go down to San Luis Obispo or Bakersfield, something like that. And, but then I started training jiu-jitsu, and I was just like, you know what? Like, there's not really a future in wrestling. I could wrestle for like 4 more years. That'd be great. Why don't I just stay here, save some money, go to college, and I can just keep doing this jiu-jitsu stuff and just have fun, And like I said, very organic. And then like immediately once I started training, I was hooked, and 2 weeks later I was jumping into the Pan Ams, tapping people out, So it was like very just like one thing led to the next.
So the interesting thing about fighters is they have to have this desire to be okay or on some level with being punched in the face. It's something not a regular person can do. But from what I'm getting from you, you seem more like the regular person. Like you're not necessarily a person that just came to terms with it and it made sense for you. You just enjoy the competition. Would you say that's how you are? You're just a regular person that loves competition, and this is just the vocation you fell into?
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of mixed. Even as a wrestler, I always like slapping on nasty cross faces and digging my face into dudes. I was a little bit on the rough side. I always liked that aspect, you know. But it's something. It's always been technical. I've always been that technical guy trying to out chess match these dudes and that kind of thing. So I'm kind of a hybrid, I guess you could say.
Now, into your career. Now, after going 9-0 to start your career, you had your first losing streak. You know, first round submission to Goiti Yamauchi, then the decision loss to Dave Rickels. I want to talk about those first before we get to your last bout, and then eventually onto what you're doing at 206. In each fight, where do you feel you made mistakes that cost you, and where was each fighter maybe better than you might have expected?
Um, it's very simple. I don't like to make excuses, but it was my mentality. It was my lack of experience and my mental state leading into both of those fights that lost me those fights. You know, the Goichi fight, I might have been a tad bit overconfident mixed with a little bit of lack of game plan. I wasn't so happy with my camp looking back at it. Not like physically speaking, but like I said, like game planning and stuff like that. Um, it was very much something mental for me, and you know, it freaking sucks, but the same thing with that Rickles fight, you know, like I honestly believe I'm a better fighter. I know I'm a better fighter than both of those dudes, and I'll get my chance with Goichi. I know that much. I'll get my hands on that dude sooner than later. Rickles, I don't know if he wants to come to 55, we can mess around, but I'm not trying to do catch weights, even though that's what I'm doing this fight. We'll get to that later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was definitely a mental state, you know, and a little bit of experience, a little bit of lack of it in my case, you know. Um, like coming up through my 9-0, like I had a lot of good fights. Like the guys that I fought were very like well matched for me. It's not like I had a bunch of tomato cans, but at the same time, it's like I didn't really face too much adversity, and I think that's what kind of got me with that Rickles fight, and again that Goichi fight. That was just, I don't know, man. It hurts my soul just thinking about it, but I'm ready to get that thing back.
What was your thinking? Because you mentioned overconfidence in game plan. Because you were undefeated, you're 9-0. You're a rising top prospect in a company that has a bunch of them. I mean, what were you thinking? Did you just go into the fight thinking, you know, I've watched the video, I've seen what he can do, I can totally take him? And was that part of your game plan, or because it was an issue with the camp, did like the lack of game plan, the lack of keeping your focus on how key the fight is, did that eventually precipitate why you ended up with AKA more full time than before?
Yeah, you know, I think it was something kind of a mix of what you said. Like game plan needs to be not just like what you're gonna do, but like how you're implementing it within your training sessions, you know. And I wasn't really doing that. To be real specific with you, like he hit me with like kind of like not a powerful but a slick little like side kick in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And that instantly sparked me, and I just fucking shot on him, you know. And it's like against a dude who's like good on the floor, even though I'm good on the floor too.
Yeah.
We're still really sticky. So why would I jump onto the floor in the beginning of the fight when there's you know, when it's really slick, when I do have better striking, even though I didn't have time to get that striking going, you know. It was just a lack of gameplay, man, and it was raw, not lack of preparation, because I always work my work ethic is second to none, but it was just I wasn't working as smart as I should have been.
How do you feel things have changed? Like, what in you or your mentality now, maybe your fight IQ, maybe just your overall game, has changed now with the switch to AKA and even the other various gyms you frequent now going into this fight?
So one huge factor, I mean, besides myself gaining experience, as well as my head coach Raul gaining experience with me as his fighter, you know, because I'm really his only full-time fighter.
Mm-hmm.
The addition of Josh Thomson has been just amazing, you know. Like I tell people all the time, I go and train at Josh's gym, and I train in his class. I train with his blue belts, his purple belts. Like I'm not worried about the level of training partners that I'm getting. What I'm doing is I'm picking his brain at every opportunity that I have. I'm listening to what his suggestions are. I'm hearing his strategy, and I have him kind of coaching and cornering me throughout my sparring sessions as well. So kind of like having that strong voice, because I don't know how well you know Josh, or if you heard him talking. Maybe you heard him talking about me during that last Carrington Banks fight, but he's very honest. He's straight and to the point. He doesn't give a shit about any of his feelings, excuse my language.
Yeah.
But he's going to tell you exactly how it is, how it needs to be, and I really appreciate that from him.
I mean, it's good to hear that, because in the growing history of MMA, a guy like Josh Thompson's gonna kind of get lost in the shuffle, because he was very, very good. He just didn't fight in the UFC in his prime years. So to be able to get his knowledge and learn from it, I mean, that's amazing for you.
Yeah, he's one of the staples of the 155-pound division.
Yeah.
He's
Oh yeah.
has probably the best trilogy in the
Mm-hmm.
history of the lightweight division.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, Josh is a living legend, and um, I go to the gym at night, and I'm amazed by the lack of people that are in there in terms of people trying to progress their career. You know.
Is he going to be in your corner for your fights going forward? Who's going to be in your corner now? Are there changes in your corner now that you've kind of shuffled your training camp?
Yeah, there was a little change last time. I was gonna have him in my corner, but he ended up working the event and not being able to. And I think that's probably gonna be the same case this time. So
Mm,
I've been putting Crazy Bob Cook in my corner,
okay.
who's just obviously amazing. You know, that
Mm-hmm.
guy's been around the block.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very thankful and lucky to have Bob Cook. So it's just, yeah, it's gonna be Raul Castillo, Bob Cook, and then my boxing coach Hector Fernandez.
Now you bounced back in a big way with your first round finish against another rising talent in Carrington Banks. Break down the chain of events that led to the finish, and did things play out like you prepared for in training camp?
Yeah, sure. So first things first, you said first. I think you meant third round finish.
Oh, it was
um,
first. Okay, I read it wrong.
yeah, it's all good. Um, yeah, that was a great fight for me. You know, I showed up and I did what I needed to do, and that's all I can ask for every time that I step into that cage. The preparation was definitely being ready for his wrestling, being ready for his striking. You know, he was a big right hand type of guy, um, and looking to put the wrestler on the back. You know, like a wrestler is always good on top. They're not always good on the bottom. So I'm good everywhere. So he did get me down, but he couldn't hold me down. I was able to get him down, and I was able to control him. And you know, for it took a long time. You know, I finished him with like about 2 minutes left in the final round, and that was just because at a certain point he gave up trying to escape. He conceded to the fact that he couldn't escape my back attack. He couldn't escape my body triangle, and he stopped really trying to do that, and he just focused on defending his neck, which is maybe a good strategy in one end, but
Mhm.
you know definitely didn't pan out for him. And I was able to just kind of take my time, lay some heavy damage on the dude, and finish him.
Now you mentioned before you were in a hybrid in terms of your mentality that wanted to get you into becoming a fighter. Would you consider yourself like a hybrid grappler, not necessarily a base of wrestling, almost like in the vein of a Jake Shields, American Jiu-Jitsu? Would you say you're more of a hybrid, a grappler, more so than just a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu base, a wrestling base?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, my accolades come from jiu-jitsu, and my base comes from wrestling. You know, I'd never reached the highest level of wrestling,
Mm.
for multiple reasons. You know, number one, I didn't wrestle through college. Number two, I didn't have the greatest coaching throughout high school, even though I had great coaches that really cared about me. It wasn't like what I'm receiving now with, you know, Olympians like DC and Sean Bunch, Kyle Crutchmer being All-American. You know, all these top wrestling dudes that I get to see and learn from now. So it was like, sure, that was my base, but then like really, I became a jiu-jitsu guy. You know, I competed a lot in the gi. I won a lot of good tournaments in the gi. But I'm not going into a cage fight looking to be on the bottom and roll upside down, you know, and be that traditional jiu-jitsu guy, only worried about getting the takedown. You know, I think I'm definitely a hybrid in the fact that, you know, I'm ready to strike with these guys. I'm still looking to get my first clean knockout from the feet, and even when we do get in the grappling situations, like what happened in the Carrington Banks fight, like I would have been completely fine with the decision because I got to smash his face the whole 3 minutes or 3 rounds. You know what I mean? Like I like that top pressure. I like making the guy uncomfortable and tiring him out and making him hate being in there with me. So yeah, I think you nailed it.
Would now, when you're going to a camp like AKA, do you feel has it been a big difference? Do you have to get your ass kicked in a little bit in a gym like that because of the talent you're working with rises so quickly? Is it a good thing? Have you gotten there and got beat up a little bit by having to go with the guys like Nurmagomedov and some of the high level talent there? And is it making you a better fighter now that you're there more often?
Yeah, I mean, so to be honest, I've been at AKA for like 10 years. You know, it's not like I just got there, but I did really, like in the past probably 3 years, I've really stepped up my frequency of being there. So yeah, absolutely. You know, it's that cliche saying, iron sharpens iron. And I've been, you know, going through it with these guys, having tough rounds back and forth, and you know, sometimes being on the losing end, sometimes being on the winning end, you know, but regardless, always getting the push that I need.
Now, before we talk about James Terry, it wasn't specific on the Bellator site. What weight are you fighting him at, since it is a catch weight?
We're fighting at 160.
Okay. Now, so at 206, you're fighting James Terry. He is a much older guy at 37. He's almost got 30 fights in experience. He's a strong wrestler. Would you be open to a ground battle since you have, as we talked about, the strong grappling mix hybrid style with him, even though despite his strong wrestling credentials?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm open to ground battle with anybody. I'm the best grappler in this division. I don't care what happened in that Goiti fight. I'm better than him too. It doesn't matter where the fight goes. That's the way I see it in this fight. I'm ready to put pressure on the guy on the feet. I'm ready to take him down, put him on his back. I'm ready to throw some crazy spin kicks, and if he takes me down, I'm not worried about it. I feel very comfortable, very well rounded. I just need to show up that night.
Are there any clear places and advantages you feel you have over him when you're scouting him and looking at his skill set?
It's a mixture of things. Everybody's dangerous off the feet. Everybody has the puncher's chance. So that's definitely an area that I've been working on, and I definitely proceed with caution in a sense. Like I just mentioned, I do feel that I'm better than everybody on the ground. So I think that's always going to be my strong suit. That's always going to be my background. But with the addition of CSA, like my striking has been just to the next level. I feel it within my training camp. I feel it even when I'm moving around in shadow boxing or sparring or whatever. So it's hard to say. It's gonna kind of take place wherever it takes place.
Now you're entering the prime years of your career. You had the fantastic start, the little bump, but then got back on a winning streak, the winning track. Like, how would you say you've grown as a fighter? I'm guessing it's gonna be on your striking level because you're already so good at your grappling before you got into MMA. Like, where have you grown as a fighter in your dozen plus fights, and are there specific coaches you want to shout out in terms of their being a big influence in helping you become an all-around well-rounded MMA fighter?
Yeah, I mean, it's to be honest, it's every coach that I've mentioned to this point. It's Raul, it's Hector, it's Josh Thomson, it's Javier Mendez. Even though we don't work one-on-one, it's the things that he says to me. It's Bob Cook, it's everybody that's helping me along the way. And I think a big area that's changed in me over the years is fight IQ, and honestly, like I've become a little bit more mean. Like I've always kind of grown up the nice guy, and been like even like within my training partners a little bit too concerned about other people. And it's kind of like at that point where it's like, all right, I'm the freaking best in the world, and I'm ready to prove it to everybody.
Now, last question. Appreciate the time you give me. What are your thoughts on the situation with Brett Primus and Michael Chandler? There seems to be trouble making the fight, or Brett Primus gets hurt, or whatever. Do you kind of wish like Bellator would do something similar to the UFC and make an interim title fight, a title belt at this point, or you're fine with whatever's going on with the 155-pound title?
Because I am where I'm at, like it doesn't really matter so much to me. I just wish all these dudes would get off the sauce and stop fucking steroiding around and stop cutting so much weight. Like that's the reason why they're getting hurt all the time, is because these dudes sauce up so hard in the off season, get so big, try to cut all this weight, they get injured. It's like it's no mystery. Like especially if you're inside of the system, like you see it, I see it in all these other camps, and so it's like I do wish that fight would just happen already. If it can't be Chandler, then give it to somebody else. Make Primus fight. That dude's been off for I don't know how long now, and I was kind of along the lines of like I feel like he won that fight fair and square. He damaged Chandler with that leg kick. The referee stoppage was a little bit goofy, but even still, it's like that doesn't matter. Let's keep it going. Let's get a fight going. I'm not the biggest fan of the interim belts, but I would like to see them at least set up a fight that gives a clear-cut top contender. That might be something good, instead of like saying, oh, here's your interim belt, be like, okay, here's your top contender spot, you get the next shot. So, like I said, if Chandler keeps pussyfooting around, then give it to somebody else.
Do you feel, since you mentioned the sauce, do you feel there are a lot of fighters out there using the stuff still?
Absolutely. It's unfortunate part of our sport and really all professional sports in general. You hear it all the time, like the old days in the UFC, the Wild West, and like the old Vitor Belfort, the old Alistair Overeems. It's like, hey, guess what, guys? That's every other organization. That it's the same rules that the UFC used to be in every other organization. UFC is the only organization using USADA, which, you know, I still even have my doubts about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, it's an unfortunate part of our sport that, you know, we just have to deal with. And I've always been a very morally strong person, and I believe in doing the right thing first. So I'm never gonna look back at my career and be like, yeah, you know, I cheated, but at least I got that belt. You know, that's never gonna be me. You know, it's always gonna be like I beat all these guys that were on the sauce. You know, and I know I've fought guys that have been on the sauce from the beginning, and that's just something that, you know, us as MMA fighters kind of have to deal with.
I'm going to talk to Curtis Blades, the UFC heavyweight, a little later, and he's even recently made comments about the UFC and there's juice heads in the sport and all this stuff. Like, what as a fighter, what is the tell, so to speak, on guys that are using? What kind of gives them away, in your opinion?
First of all, shout out to Curtis. That dude's a savage. I like his fight style. I like his mentality. Even though he's not winning a lot of fans, he's got me. But it's a mixture of things. It's performance, it's output, it's obviously the smell test is pretty predictable. But it is also just the underlying knowing of what's going on behind the scenes.
And you can't tell me that.
I mean, I can't speak. To be honest with you, I've never seen any steroids in my entire life. I've never seen dudes at AKA passing it around. I've never seen anything. So it's not that I've seen it. It's more of the talk of people that have.